Good afternoon and welcome to the Improving Talks. We are rounding out our series on UX by everyone this week. And I'm very excited to present Michael D'Onofrio. He'll be presenting a talk on outcomes in leadership, how UX can positively transform your business. Just a little bit about Michael. Michael is a creator of engaging interactive experiences that span business, entertainment, online marketing, e-commerce, SharePoint, and M365 and more. He's a thoughtful leader in the UX space, incorporating information architecture, client research, and a multitude of UX tools to help customers generate ROI and measurable results. So, Michael, I'm ready to turn it over to you. Get ready to learn.
Right, that should do it.
All right, we do see you, Michael. We don't see a screen yet. There
Here we
you
go.
go. Woohoo! We've
You
got the
got it.
technology. I'll turn it over to you.
All right, great. Thanks for the intro. Really excited to be talking today. We're going to be going through outcomes in leadership, how UX can positively transform your business. This is our last part of our series on UX. So UX by Everyone is the series that we've had some great speakers do. These are all on YouTube. If you weren't able to join, I'll do little recaps or pull some small things. That's one of the advantages of going last. We had some great things presented by Martino in the UX mindset, David Belcher through the UX maturity model, talk about that today. And Brian Komet through the UX teams and methodologies, definitely getting into the very specifics about how these teams work. But today we really want to pull back and think about how leaders can really take advantage of UX, really think about UX within the organization, within some of the typical processes that you're using today, and really what are those outcomes that you're looking for? What are those big impacts? And so, like I said, these talks are available within our YouTube channel. And like I get the advantage again of going last, so I can pull from the best of the previous talks. So I'll give some shout outs there where credit is due for sure. And even more credit where credit is due. Mark Twain said it best: no such thing as a new idea. This is not all coming from my brain, of course. I'm pulling a lot of really good stuff from Jared Spool. Got to be one of the happiest looking UX leaders out there. He's got a lot of great talks and does this stuff for a living. So a lot of really good information that I've got compiled here. And of course, the OGs are the Nielsen Norman Group. They've been doing it forever, and hard not to reference them in any kind of UX talk. So pulling the maturity model and a few other things from them as well along the way. As a table setter here, I really think it's important to think about terminology. And one of the things that it's come up in the other talks, Martino had this in his talk, was the whole concept of just what do we call ourselves? What are UX professionals referring to themselves nowadays? And really, what's the easier way to do it? So if we can agree on a label, I think that just makes the conversation easier. It was UX, or it was UI UX, I think, for a while. And then, UX designer, UX UI. You could see there is this great study that was done in a survey from an organization called UX Tools. The past survey showed, hey, UX designer was kind of winning, but product designer was pretty close. Now here, a few years later, a new survey was done. Over 3,200 individuals replied from around the world, and definitely leaning towards that product designer. And I honestly just feel like it's easier. Let's look at product design. We're all building products. We're maintaining products. We're a part of this product pipeline in some capacity, even if it's a service or whatever it is. It all comes into play. And I think it comes back to being a product designer. So I'll refer to us. I'll use the word UX, of course, throughout this, but let's think of it as product designer. I think that's going to make all of our lives just a little bit easier. So starting back to that first talk, the UX mindset, Martina did a great job setting the table in this concept of a way of thinking that connects strategy and design by understanding what is meaningful and valuable for both users and organizations. And I think that last part is the big key: bringing together our user base, our customers, our sales team, whoever we're actually reaching with our application, website, internet, digital product, whatever it is, and the business. What is the business trying to accomplish, and how are we connecting those dots? Huge concept there for sure. Within that is a whole set of principles, and I'm sure many of you have heard these terms before. You've heard about the fail fast concept, and iterative experience, and empathy comes into play a lot. Listening, human-centeredness, human-centered design, all these kind of terms and these benefits, but how do they really get applied? And when they're applied, just how does it work? How do we actually start to implement these in a realistic way? That's what I hope to really kind of shed some light on today as we get into some of the details. And when it comes to transformation, we know it's not easy. And as we look at this kind of scale, we're going up the slope here. We go from kind of an easiest to hardest, and the mindsets are the hardest to change. When we think about tool sets, those are easy. Like, hey, we've got some new cutting edge programs out there. They make our jobs easier. Hey, let's look at those tool sets and let's implement them in the business. Skill sets, we can do training, we can improve things, we can hire, we can bring in those skill sets that we need. But mindsets, it's a much bigger undertaking. This is that cultural shift, a more seismic shift of us really learning how to think in similar ways, but then implement those practices and those principles into what we're doing to change the mindsets around those individuals. It really does start from the top down. If leadership is embracing these mindsets, we get more and more others to kind of follow along and understand, the benefits and why we're doing it this way, and why it's such a impactful thing for the business to do it. So again, here we're using product, right? You might see design as everyone's responsibility, UX is everyone's responsibility, but let's even simplify it further. It's product design. And if we're, again, building, maintaining, we're all part of that pipeline in one way or another. Let's think of it as product design and why it's our responsibility. As far as leaders, I'm here to talk to you. I want to address what's going to make your lives easier and what do you ultimately want? Let's talk about that first. We know what Michael Scott wants. Maybe you want that too, I don't know. But hopefully it's more on the love side than the fear. But let's make it even simpler. You want results. We all want results. And we want those results to lead to success. Very simply put. And that's what I hope that we can show today in implementing some of these processes and what you do. So again, I already said this, I think, a couple of times. We're creating things, we are building, we are maintaining product, service, whatever it is. We need it to deliver success for the business. And that means people use it and people enjoy it. And it's real people. And I'm not IA yet. I think I'm 100% human last time I checked. I'm guessing most of us are. We haven't lost our jobs yet. That's a really good sign. Our customers, our users are all real people. They have expectations. We need to really understand those to build better things. How do we actually start to implement and do that? Based on your organization, based on your practices, this is where that maturity model comes into place. I think even if we just scan through this, we can kind of see right away, how are we really implementing UX and that idea of it as a practice within our organizations? And I've worked with clients across the board here, from absent, from that 1 to 6. But for us as leaders and for many leaders in the industry, you want to see yourself in that top tier. You want to know that you have a structure at least and that you're building off of that. But of course, for many, it's emergent. I think a lot of companies are still looking at things in their pipeline and their process. And depending on how full it is, you're working while the pipeline is full. You're trying to get things done. It's a very reactive situation that many find themselves in, especially on the IT side, of trying to implement and maintain systems and build new products. And hey, all these new features, everyone's kind of coming down the pipeline. We need this, we need this, we need this. Okay, let's try to prioritize it and let's try to fit it in. But are we stepping back and really understanding where these things are coming from and really what the ultimate benefit is? That's what I really want to boil it down to. So we can see our organizations and our success grow into that structured, integrated, user-driven, and really make it a habit and a permanent part of the process. So I mentioned that idea of proactive versus reactive. And when we look at that low UX maturity, it's very reactive. Like I said, things are coming down, features are needed, someone's made a decision, and we've got to go and start to build these things. We don't necessarily know how it's going to fit into the bigger picture when teams are building all of that. But that's kind of what's happening. The high UX maturity is really looking at it in a more proactive way. And that's that sweet spot. Can we get to that 80-20? Can we flip the script to become more mature and show that, the real benefits that are gained from this? So putting that into view, the traditional idea of starting with a roadmap, or, maybe your organization doesn't think about it as a roadmap. It's a backlog, it's a plan, it's something. Maybe it's even a checklist, I don't know, but you're always starting with something, and hopefully it is a much broader roadmap that takes a lot of planning and needs to be informed. And when we think about the traditional or the low maturity when it comes to the understanding of UX, design just happens later. This roadmap is built, decisions have been made, things are prioritized, and now that traditional design sense comes after. Our goal would be to become more proactive, or in order to be more proactive, it really has to be part of that research and strategy. That's part of design too. If we are truly product designers, we are not just executors at the end of the process. We are there at the beginning. Jared Spool makes a lot of jokes about seat at the table. Like, where is this table? Who is sitting there? What is it made out of? How many seats exist around this table? The whole concept is these things are happening all the time. There's a lot of individuals involved with the decisions that ultimately get made. But where is the research to prove that that's the value that our end users really want? And so when we are engaging at that level, at that strategic beginning, really thinking about the research, we're all working together as a team, product managers, business analysts, the designers, the engineers, the developers. Everyone has a seat at the table to a certain extent because decisions need to be made. We need to know the benefits. We need to do that upfront research. We need to prove it. That's the proactive goal here. To go a little step further to talk about some more details and then show it in action further, Jen Cardello is the user research, head of user research at Fidelity. And she tells a story about coming in and seeing what this reactive groups were doing in the organization. And when it's pure reactive, you're just worried about building it right. It's all you can really think about. There's a feature, we need to build it right. There's certain specs, there's certain requirements, certain user stories, however it kind of comes down the pipeline, we need to build it right. But when you become proactive, you are actually doing that research up front to determine, is this the right problem? Are we actually aligning the right solution to that problem? And once we can know that and have information to back that up, now we can build it right. So that's that fuller process that keeps us out of just pure reaction and gets us to really put that strategic thinking up front to make it smarter and better. So in this reactive world, it's all features, right? We're constantly worrying about a feature. And in this order, hey, we need our application internet website to do a thing. We hear this all the time. There's the new idea, there's a new thought, there's a new shiny new object that we know is really important. And those things could be all kinds of different types of features. It could be something as simple as playing a video, maybe you're exporting data, there's a countdown widget on your site, you're announcing something, all kinds of different features, big and small, come into play. So now we have that feature, so we have to build it right. There's our reactive world. But we're not asking the questions why. What is really happening here? What is this problem that we're trying to solve? What is that desired outcome? That's a huge part of that UX process. Are we always asking that question to know, what do we really need our users to do? What are they trying to accomplish? And do we have that right solution that measures up to those things? And our huge goal, we want to make our users' lives better. We want to make something easier for them, faster for them. If we've come up with a great idea and we haven't properly implemented it, they might not even know it's there. So how is that going to impact their lives? We need to find ways to kind of measure this and prove this. So again, as now we start to move out of that features world, how can we get more to the outcomes? How can we start to shift the mindset and get away from the reactive, hey, we know what the current experience is. We've identified some kind of issue or an opportunity or whatever it might be. And now we've got a feature that tries to fix that. But how do we know when we are proactive, we are actually digging in a lot deeper. We're finding issues and finding opportunities, but we are actually trying to define those as true problems. And it can be or in some cases, really look at that desired outcome first and say, this is what really is going to matter to our user base. This is the thing that is going to now make it, instead of a 6-step process, a 3-step process, or whatever it is, we know that there's going to be an impact, and that's the desired outcome that we want. And now we can find a solution to fix that. I think one of the hardest things for us to constantly think about is we're always looking for a solution, especially for leaders that want those strong results fast. What is the solution? What is the answer to that issue? Well, we really need to do that upfront research to really find the right one before we jump in and solution. So as I said, these can be a little interchangeable. Problems and outcomes, they're very similar. So it really depends on the situation, but we need at least one of those as a leg to stand on. So that's when we can kind of come in now and do all those cool UX things that we saw, like in the beginning, some of those principles of actually doing the research, listening to users. Now we can iterate and experiment and get some feedback and allow that right solution to come forward and present itself. Jared Spool also says it in a way as like, we shouldn't be falling in love with the solution. We should be falling in love with the problem. And I like the way that manifests itself because we are falling in love with finding that right solution because we really understand that's a huge problem. We want to, of course, solve it, but we want to identify for the user, yeah, that's going to make their lives easier. We've solved that problem. Now we really feel good about it. There's a lot of different solutions that might solve that problem. We'll get to those, but we know that we're solving it. That's the ultimate goal. So when we see this play out, so even before we get to that world of feature and solution, we're trying to identify that problem to solve. We're identifying a desired outcome. We're hitting those solutions against the wall and seeing what sticks and finding better ways to solution, new ways to solution, new ways to innovate. And we're all trying to get to that desired outcome or fix that problem. Once we actually find that alignment, boom, we can now record that as a true feature that needs to be released. And we've got some of this backing as to why it should be there. Now is the value, right? How can we actually prove that value? We've done our strategic research, we've got our current experience, we've done all the work and iterated, hey, we've got a new set of features or feature to release. What does that start to look like? Now that we've got that solution, we know that we can make the user's lives better. Let's start to define the value. How do we calculate the effort that's going to go behind that? That's going to come into play. That's going to help us evaluate the confidence of, hey, we know we can implement that feature. We can be accurate about our estimates, from a development standpoint. And from there, we can actually measure that and define the value, which is going to allow us to prioritize. If something becomes such a heavy lift, is it actually worth the impact? Let's go back to the research and let it prove itself that yes, this is going to be such a huge benefit. We see that this amount of effort is worth it because we know what an impact it can have on the user. We know it's going to increase usability in this process, whatever it is. There's all kinds of scenarios that we can see that. Now we can actually start to prioritize around that because we feel confident on the value. And I really feel like that's what leaders want, is to see that confidence come through. They want their teams to be confident, but they know they want to be accurate. I've seen it a lot in a lot of different circles of, hey, we're building something and you've got a team they're all agreeing on what needs to be built, but are they confident in what is going to be produced? Is it going to make the user's life easier? Is it actually going to have that impact on the business? The value, is it there? They're not really sure, but they know people are demanding it. So they're trying to push for it and get it done. This allows us to take a step back and really see that the value is there before we go full steam ahead. And of course, if it's really not adding up, maybe some more research needs to be done. We can take a pause on that, or we can say, hey, that goes on the back burner, that goes lower on the backlog, or that's, getting a new position in the roadmap because we're just not there yet. The effort is just too great. That really helps us prioritize. So this process, we're really transforming the process is the goal here. It's to be proactive in the approach. We're reframing the features as problems to solve, desired outcomes. That's huge. Get us out of that constant solutioning mindset and really step back and think about the problems and align them to outcomes. This is going to make the teams better. They're going to be finding better solutions and understanding the real users' problems. And it's the proactive research. And I think that's something that maybe not all organizations are doing, or to the extent that they could be doing it, and really thinking about that through the UX lens. And that's where you have some really talented people doing some great research, allow them to do what they need to do and bring you those results. So now we can really see, hey, we've researched the problem. We've got facts here that we can go against. Now we can start to measure against that. And that gets us into that calculation, understanding the effort, the confidence we have behind it. We're always struggling to estimate accurately, in this business. It's difficult to do. This will allow us a lot more freedom in that world, but then to get a lot more accurate. That's a huge goal. So as we said at the beginning here, transform the mindset. That's one of the hardest things to do. So where can we use this UX world, this wealth of great things that are out there and practices and principles and processes. Think about it from a product design standpoint. We want to reduce risk. That's one of the ultimate goals. And I think that's what leadership wants to see too, is how are we being more effective? How are we reducing risk? Well, implementing these practices can start to do that for you. That research is going to gain confidence in what you're presenting and building, confidence in your teams, a lot of benefits across the board there. Ultimately, we're reframing that concept of features to problems and outcomes. And that's what's going to get us to that empathetic and all those principles we saw up front, right? Empathetic, human-centeredness, outcome-driven, all that goodness that we want to achieve. These UX skill sets can start to bring us there, and we can make better products through better product design. Going back to the maturity model, implementing these things are going to start moving us up that slope, right? We're going to go from emergent to becoming a lot more structured. Having more of these things done proactively is going to make our products more problem-solving, outcome-driven products. Ultimately, at the end, people are going to be happier. That's what we want. We want happy users. We want to get to this level. All right, let's make it real. And sorry again, robot, but we're making it real here. Let's try to kind of frame this through some of those benefits. You got to find some great product designers. So this is the big wordy slide, little self-indulgent. Totally, we'll own up to that. But great product designers will make you look like a hero. That's their goal. They understand how to do the research. They understand how to align and be empathetic with those users. They're bringing in tried and true UX, UI design principles, processes, best practices. And I think a big key there is knowing how they apply to your business. I don't know how many times you see this with a lot of clients too, and within different organizations. What is our process? Are we waterfall? Are we agile? Are we wagile? All these terms. How does it actually fit for the way you do things, your culture, your organization? We need to find processes that are going to work for you, and those mindset shifts, where they're going to be inserted, how you're going to start to move the mountain to get to these more, great efficiencies and all these great results. You need to find the processes that are going to work for you. And a really seasoned, really, senior product designer is going to be able to see that and know how some of these pieces need to fit together, because ultimately these individuals can bridge gaps. They're great communicators. And they can talk to different areas of the business. And sometimes that in itself is really difficult. That could be its own talk here about really how you kind of tear down silos within your organization. And especially when all these things are kind of coming through ultimately to IT or whoever's developing and responsible for all this development work. How are we bridging those gaps to really kind of get IT to understand what we're trying to accomplish, why we're trying to accomplish it? How do we see that prioritization happening? We've got to get a lot of groups talking, and your product designers can be inserted into a lot of those conversations. They can help interpret things that are happening within the product owner's world, within R&D, Marcom especially, and start to bridge those gaps and communicate to IT how we need to do things and how we can be more efficient doing them too. That brain of the product designer is going to go in and try to find gaps within that process. They're going to try to find gaps within the products. They're going to challenge some of those expectations that you have. A lot of organizations find things that work and they think those processes work for everybody, and they don't really stop to think, well, where are those true efficiencies that we can gain within that process? A product designer is going to look at those differently. They're going to observe and not judge. They're going to listen to users. They're going to listen to the product owners, and they're going to work proactively to find solutions. And ultimately, as a leader, you want the proof, and that's what can be brought to you. How can you leverage that product designer, reap all those benefits? This is really just summing it up for you. Create that confidence in your organization. Better products, happier users, better results. That's what we all want. We're trying to mitigate that risk. less confusion is huge. All those lines of business, we're trying to mitigate risk all along the way. We don't want to waste. We want to develop things the right way, but of course we need to learn about those problems and outcomes. We can develop the greatest, shiniest thing, but if it doesn't fit, users ignore it. You need that adoption. Everybody wants that adoption and engagement. These practices can help you get there. And all of that is going to save that bottom line. That there is an investment in your upfront strategic thinking, researching, planning, but it's going to save you down the line. How many times has an organization or has someone here released something out there? Everyone was really hyped for it, thought it was a great idea. First couple months, it's going strong, and then all of a sudden, it's abandoned. Nobody's back there using it anymore. The use cases either weren't there, the research wasn't there to prove why this was actually going to solve people's problems for the long term, and it just became a colossal waste of investment. This is the meaningful transformation that you want to start to obtain to get to that level 4, 5, and 6 in your maturity model. So actually went a little faster than I thought. So that's good. Got some summary here of, again, just the 4 talks that were done. This is the 4th one, the last one in the series of UX by Everyone. The previous ones are all available on YouTube to see. That 3rd talk, I want to give a shout out to Brian again. It's really getting into the weeds on those processes. Like, what is a retrospective and why is it beneficial? And what are all these agile things that you could be doing? It gets into some really meaningful specifics there. So definitely worth taking a look at if you want to get down and try to realize, like, hey, what are the things that are really going to work within my process and within my world? There is another talk series coming up after this. This leadership series is coming up. There's going to be 4 great talks over the next 4 weeks. I believe Lynn, our speaker here, our producer here, is leading the last one on March 27th, which is great. But a lot of really good meeting, and we want this to basically transition to that. Really think about you as a leader and what you're trying to affect in your business, and find some meaning within these next series of talks. So I want to thank you all, really thank you all for coming and spending some time with me here. If it's your lunch hour, I appreciate that. If you're taking time out of your busy day, I appreciate that even more. Time for a QA here. Anybody who's got a question, I'd love to go back to anything. And hopefully I educated you not only on UX and product design, but some memes too. There's some really good meme history in this deck. So if you do have a question about memes, I'm happy to field those as well.
Well, Michael, I think you hit a couple of sensitive spots with proactive and process. So I do have a few questions. First of all, how do I leverage the UX team I have in place in order to do proactive work?
Well, that's good. And if you've got that UX team in place, that's awesome, because I think that is sometimes finding those good people is hard, right? So if you've got those individuals there, I think it's really going back and looking at those processes that you have in place. How are you actually doing research right now? How is research viewed? Are you in that 3 in the model, right? Is it emergent for you, but are you still kind of looking at design as the traditional, it happens at the end. We have to get our roadmap done and our planning done, and then all the design happens at the end. Maybe there are some emergent things there, but how does that structure really apply? Are you applying the research up front? Are you having those UX individuals in the conversation? And I think that's it, is getting that UX team or that lead or that multiple leads into those conversations early to really reap the benefits of the strategy. That's what you want to have up front happening for sure.
Awesome. I think that's really helpful and really smart. So next question, and these are all kind of in the same vein. What activities would you suggest doing with leaders that would demonstrate being proactive in design?
Okay, so good activities for leaders to be involved with. Well, I think it depends on the different level of, I guess, that leadership too. There are workshops that can be done. There are ways to kind of bring it to life in that manner, where we can do some practice practice scenarios. There's different exercises that will kind of show you the value of UX. So there's workshops where it will open up some eyes and show things that are going on out there. A lot of times what I've done just to show value is even just competitive analysis, really like sort of stopping of, hey, where is our product or whatever we're producing, whatever we're doing out there? What are competitors doing out there? What have they been doing in the last few years that we might not be aware of? I think everyone knows their top competitors in their industry, but what are they actually doing to reach individuals, or how are they implementing new practices into what they're doing? That might surprise people sometimes. So I always find it really effective for leadership to say, hey, you think you know who your competitor is and what they're doing. Maybe there's some new ones out there in the landscape that are really innovating that you're not aware of, but look at what they're doing out there. Let's learn from them. Let's keep on raising that bar. And some of those things are eye-opening as well. So
And
hopefully the
I
question
love
is,
these questions about the, leaders wanting to get involved so that the UX team doesn't feel like it's on an island. And we kind of have the other side of that. And the next question is I don't see how our UX team, our current UX team, can engage with UX folks and increase our UX maturity. Do I have to push the engagement as a leader, or are there better strategies to grow this maturity?
That's interesting. So basically saying that it doesn't seem like they have that proactive capability. Is that maybe a way to read into it?
I think they're talking about their current teams interacting with the UX folks. I
Oh,
might
the
have added a
current
couple
teams
of
that are
words there.
seeing the
Sorry about
value
that.
with the UX folks, right?
Uh-huh.
Bridging those gaps. That's huge, right? Having that good communication in place and having some individuals that can actually facilitate what those meetings look like and how we could actually get to that good research. Sometimes it's really hard to get to those end users, right? We want to talk to the users. We want to do a survey. We want to get out there and find out what they think is valuable and what isn't. But just going across lines of business can be difficult too. So I think it really is showing them like, hey, we're doing this for a reason. There's true value here that we can get out of this, and we can start to get more information out of those individuals. Sometimes it is difficult. They're like, hey, we're too busy. We don't have time to do for that. We can't talk to somebody from UX to do that. But if that's not happening, maybe it does have to be a more formal process. Like, hey, we're going to go around to all lines of business. We need to take an hour. We need to do some interviewing. We need to sit down and just get some of that information out of those individuals and start there. And now we've got something compiled where we're understanding what that line of business sees as valuable, why they're sort of maybe lost in certain areas, and maybe there's things within their processes that they could be looking at that they can gain efficiencies about being more proactive themselves. So now we're getting probably into a bigger conversation there, but hopefully there are some UX benefits to them seeing the results, but actually, being in that room and communicating with them, hearing that perspective from a different side of the business, and really just like a different mindset that those UX folks bring to the table, finding the value in those conversations.
Okay, great. And one final question. You were talking about getting product designers and others involved in the planning stage. Any other tips or tricks for how you get others to see the value?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like really kind of for those that haven't been a part of a UX kind of interview or a UX way of thinking, UX research, really just exposing them to that, so maybe you got to do a little bit of a roadshow and say, hey, this is what the UX team is doing, and this is how they go about their work, and really just educating people on what they do, how they communicate, finding new ways to answer some of those questions. There's always that concept of the kind of one of the principles where you kind of step back and you listen, and you really, like I think I mentioned before, interviewing different individuals in those lines of businesses and really just get them talking. It's not easy, especially for those that have like a really ingrained view on how they think things should go. But I think that's where you can really take a step back and try to implement some of these processes slowly. That would be the other thing to do, is just implement one or two different strategies as you start. You're not going to change the mindsets overnight, of course, right? Start small. There's some really good stuff in Brian's presentation about like, how we actually communicate and where you start with agile, right? And where you're actually meeting more for shorter bursts of time. You can look at like Scrum and things like that of like, hey, let's just communicate and let's stop emailing each other. Let's actually talk every day for 10 minutes about what we're working on and why we're doing it. And, different types of things like that that can really start to change the mindset and bring new value.
I love that. I'm an agilist, so that I'm all about the conversation. So,
There you go.
um,
There you go.
and we just had a couple more pop up. So, um, are there financial metrics that show the downstream project cost or savings by front loading UX?
The ROI, yeah, it's always a big one, and it is. It's challenging to bring forward. There is some stuff out there that I've seen because we're always looking for it too, right? There are some models in place, and what we do hope is to find that kind of like that structure that I talked about of deconstructing the value and really starting to get to tighter estimates and better estimating by the teams that are implementing things. A lot more accuracy from development and IT when it comes to these things. Those are things you can prove, and that you hope that you can say, we are annually now saving more on those spends, or what those developers are doing and the time that they're spending. There is hopefully savings that you can easily see from that. When it comes to the pure ROI of, hey, this piece of research saved me X, it is difficult to get to, but there is some good stuff out there. Maybe that's a topic for a future talk, because it's complicated, but there is some good material out there for sure.
And we may hold you to that.
Yeah, right. It is. It is the
and
holy grail.
Yep. One more question. If UX is bolted on after a project has begun, what are some effective strategies to roll UX research and UI design into the software development lifecycle more effectively?
Oh, that's a good one too, right? Because we've seen that a lot. And as a consultant in all my years doing this, for sure, we get brought into projects at that level. A lot of decisions have been made, and that kind of goes back to the one of the slides I showed earlier was that whole idea of like that traditional design, and showing that hey, design happens after, right? So now we've got ourselves in a certain kind of conundrum to a certain extent of where we're building something, but we're not really sure if it's going to fit. Well, we want to salvage what we can. We definitely want to look at what's been done and what we truly feel is salvageable, and find ways to get that research inserted later in the game. It's not too late to go back and say, let's find are we identifying the problem correctly? Do we understand the outcome that we're trying to achieve? And align some of those already made solutions back and see what fits and what doesn't. And in some cases we are sort of salvaging what has been built. We've got maybe the scaffolding of something that can still work with some tweaks and some new improvements to the experience. We can still solve that problem at a bigger level. So it can still happen later in the process. But the sooner the better. Get somebody in there and get them to ask those right questions, to talk to the right individuals, get to end users if possible, just get the right stakeholders involved at that time and get some of those answers. Because whatever it is, somebody's out there that's got a piece of information that could be a difference maker. Let's try to get to those individuals.
Great advice. And just a comment that was added: measure, and validate decisions and then improve. So,
I like it. I
great
like
comments. I love it.
Yes.
Too. So.
I'm going to say
All
a
right.
UX or maybe, but we'll see. Good stuff.
All right, Michael, anything else before we end?
No, I think that's it. Great questions. I'm hoping some people got something out of it, and yeah, we'll be looking to do some more of these in the future. So I'm really excited to have the opportunity to talk to everybody today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I know I learned something. And for those of you on the line, look for our leadership series to continue next month. We appreciate you coming today, and have a great Wednesday.
So thank you so much.
Bye.